Investigators in New Hampshire have a big break in the decades-old murder mystery of an unidentified woman and 3 little girls found in steel barrels. With 3 child victims, this case is a top priority here at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. There's still a lot of work ahead and help needed from the public. But we can now report that another NCMEC case involving an unidentified child on the other side of the country has set New Hampshire investigators on the right path to answers. The mystery in Allenstown, New Hampshire began in 1985. Hunters found the bodies of a woman and a little girl in these woods near Bear Brook State Park. The bodies were wrapped in canvas and plastic, hidden inside a steel barrel. No one knew the identities of the victims, where they were from, or how they might be related. Then, 15 years later, in 2000, a state trooper looking for clues at the original crime scene discovered a second barrel. Inside, another 2 bodies, 2 little girls. Investigators determined these new victims were part of the original crime scene. All 4 bodies had been in the woods all along. These faces were created by NCMEC forensic artists, and while we still don't know their names, DNA testing reveals that the woman is related to the youngest and the eldest girl, but not the middle child. The New Hampshire mystery is just one out of hundreds of cases here involving unidentified children at the National Center. Every day, our case managers support law enforcement across the country searching for answers. But rarely do 2 cases here suddenly collide. For several years now, NCMEC's Ashley Rodriguez has been working with investigators with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department in Southern California on the bizarre case of an unidentified little girl.
The victim here is now a grown woman, but she was just a baby when she was kidnapped. The kidnapper raised her as his own daughter, and he named her Lisa. And when she was about 5 years old, he abandoned her and simply disappeared.
Trying to find out her real name, his kidnapping victim, Lisa, worked with genealogy experts and San Bernardino Sheriff's investigators for years. Finally, the search that began in California ended up 3,000 miles away in Manchester, New Hampshire. Investigators say Lisa's mother is this woman, Denise Bowden. It turns out that Lisa was just a baby when she lived here with her mother and her mother's boyfriend. Police have now discovered that in 1981, all 3 suddenly vanished. Here in Manchester, when Denise suddenly disappeared, her family thought she just took off to start a new life. For 35 years, no one ever reported her missing.
We need to find Denise. We don't know where she is. We presume that she's become a victim of homicide. We now know that the daughter is alive and well and is accounted for and living in another state, but we still do not know where Denise is at this time.
Just last week, investigators began digging at Denise Bowden's former home, looking for any evidence that might help her. Police have turned up new pictures of Denise Bowden's boyfriend from the 1980s. At the time, he was going by the name Bob Evans. Police now know that was one of many aliases. Back at the National Center, case managers began connecting the dots.
So once we received the confirmation of Lisa's identification, we were so relieved for her. But then when I started looking at a map of Manchester, New Hampshire, it just dawns on me that Manchester is really close to Allenstown and to a case that Carol was working.
Manchester was honestly just a few miles away from Allenstown where the barrels were discovered. And we just kind of looked at each other and said, wow, like what if?
Yeah, and thinking that it is possible that they could be connected, I reached back out to San Bernardino almost immediately and asked the detective if he was aware of the quadruple murder that had occurred in Allenstown.
With that, agencies on both sides of the country went into action. Could there be a connection to the Allenstown case after 3 decades? DNA results revealed an astonishing yes. Investigators say Bob Evans is the father of the middle child found in the second barrel. The little girl, 2 to 4 years old, not related to the rest of the victims.
We've got who we believe is our offender. Everything suggests that. We have a direct tie to one of the victims genetically. We have ties with this Bob Evans to the scene itself in Allenstown, but we still don't know who any of these victims are.
Investigators are now hoping you can help. The man known as Bob Evans has several aliases. He says he spent time in Quebec, Canada, and many places throughout the U.S., including Texas, Idaho, and Virginia. And it's possible there are more murder victims out there.
We know Denise Bowden is out there somewhere, and we know that that mother of the middle child is out there somewhere, and neither of them have been accounted for. Normally we start with the identity of the victims and we find our killer. Here we believe we found our killer. Now we're going to try to identify our victims. And maybe along the way we find more victims.
If you have any information about this woman or any of the children, please call 1-800-THE-LOST.